I remember that fateful evening when the sky was painted with hues of crimson and gold, and an unsettling chill hung in the air. I set out to check on our pregnant sheep, a routine task that had now become tinged with an inexplicable sense of unease. As I drove towards the grazing fields, a figure atop a distant mountain caught my eye. It crouched, unmoving, its form silhouetted against the dying light. A sense of dread crept over me as I watched, feeling the weight of its gaze upon me. Suddenly, a commotion drew my attention. A large, imposing wolf charging towards me from a distance. Instinctively, I grabbed my rifle and fired, aiming to protect the livestock. But as I closed in, there was no sign of the wolf. Confusion gnawed at me as I scoured the surroundings, searching for any trace of the predator. A sense of dread settled in, signaling that something sinister was afoot. Then, I heard it. The heartbreaking cries of our pregnant sheep, a sound that pierced through the evening stillness. With a rush of panic, I sprinted towards the source of the distress, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached the spot, my worst fears were realized. The sheep was gone, leaving behind only scattered signs of a violent struggle. Horror washed over me as I grappled with the realization that something malevolent had taken our precious animal. The sinking feeling in my gut urged me to return home, to protect my wife from the encroaching darkness that now tainted our ranch. Every step was heavy with dread, my mind racing with the inexplicable events that had unfolded. Reaching the safety of our home, I found my wife, her face etched with concern and worry. I struggled to convey the terror that had gripped me, the sense of an unseen malevolence looming over our land. The events of that night remained an unsolved mystery, a chilling reminder that there are forces beyond comprehension lurking in the shadows. The ranch that was once our haven had transformed into a place of uncertainty and fear, leaving us haunted by the inexplicable and the unexplained. I've carried this tale like a weight upon my soul, a nightmarish experience that still sends shivers down my spine. A chilling encounter with a skinwalker. It happened during one of my visits to a remote Navajo reservation in the desolate lands of the American Southwest. The legends of skinwalkers had always intrigued me, a fascination born from curiosity and a desire to understand the unknown. As dusk descended, I found myself wandering through the isolated terrain, surrounded by the rugged beauty of the desert. The air was heavy with an unsettling silence, and a sense of unease settled in as the sun dipped below the horizon. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a solitary, cloaked silhouette that moved with an uncanny grace. My heart quickened its pace as I watched the figure draw closer, a primal instinct warning me of an impending danger. The closer it came, the more I realized that something was dreadfully wrong. Its movements were unnatural, its gait twisted and eerie. Its eyes held a haunting glint, reflecting a darkness that defied rationality. In a state of inexplicable fear, I attempted to retreat, but it was as though the very air had thickened around me, restraining my movements. The figure drew closer, its features contorting and shifting with an unholy fluidity. A guttural voice, echoing with an otherworldly resonance, pierced the silence, uttering words that sent chills down my spine. My mind reeled with a primal terror, as though the fabric of reality itself had been torn asunder. In that horrifying moment, I realized I was facing a Skinwalker, a being that defied logic, a malevolent force that had taken on a grotesque facade to torment and terrify. I fled, my heart pounding with each frantic step, the memory of that encounter burning like a brand in my mind. The haunting whispers of that night continued to echo in my dreams, a constant reminder of the inexplicable horrors that lurk within the unknown. To this day, I carry the weight of that encounter, a reminder that some mysteries are better left untouched, that there are entities beyond comprehension that haunt the fringes of our reality, a chilling testament to the existence of forces that defy explanation. The memory of that night still haunts me, etched into my mind like a nightmare that refuses to fade, a bone-chilling encounter with the malevolent force of a Skinwalker. My hunting partner and I had ventured deep into the remote mountains, seeking game among the rugged terrain. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and anticipation as we followed the trail of our prey. But the tranquility of the woods was shattered by a series of unnerving sounds, an unnatural cacophony that echoed through the valleys. Animals scattered in a panicked frenzy, fleeing from an unseen terror that gripped the heart of the forest. We exchanged uneasy glances, our instincts warning us of the danger lurking in the shadows. Ignoring the rising sense of foreboding, we pressed on, following the unnerving sounds that seemed to call to us from the depths of the woods. As we approached a clearing, a bone-chilling sight awaited us. A figure hunched over a slain deer, its form twisted and grotesque. A sense of dread seized us as the figure slowly turned towards us, its eyes gleaming with an unholy hunger. Before we could react, it pounced with unnatural speed, its inhuman form lashing out with ferocity. My partner bore the brunt of the attack, the Skinwalker's savage claws tearing through flesh and bone. Terrified and desperate, I fled in a blind panic, racing back to our cabin, where the rest of our friends were waiting. Fear coursed through me as I heard the Skinwalker's menacing howls and the thunderous crash of trees being torn apart. Reaching the safety of the cabin, I relayed the nightmarish encounter to my friends, our hearts gripped with horror and uncertainty. Determined to defend ourselves, we armed ourselves with our rifles, trembling with a mix of fear and resolve. From the cabin, we saw it, a nightmarish figure tearing through the woods, leaving destruction in its wake. With shaking hands, we aimed our weapons at the Skinwalker, ready to defend ourselves against the ancient malevolence that had descended upon us. As we fired our guns, the Skinwalker vanished into the depths of the woods, leaving behind a trail of shattered trees and haunting echoes. The adrenaline-fueled terror lingered, a chilling reminder that some horrors defy explanation and lurk in the darkest corners of the world, a testament to the relentless and malevolent force of the Skinwalker. I remember that night vividly, as clear as the stars that pierced the desert sky. A bone-chilling encounter with the malevolent force of a Skinwalker. My father and I had ventured deep into the desolate expanse of the desert, seeking solitude under the starlit canopy. The night was alive with the haunting whispers of the wind, and as the flames crackled in our campfire, We shared stories of the Wendigo and the Skinwalker, the legends that had long haunted these lands. The tales grew more eerie as the darkness deepened around us. We spoke of the dangers, the warnings passed down through generations, and the eerie presence of these ancient entities that stalked the night. And then, as if the stories had summoned the darkness itself, a figure emerged from the depths of the desert. It approached us with an eerie silence, a haunting silhouette against the flickering flames. The air grew thick with an inexplicable dread, a warning etched into the very fabric of my being. The figure sat by our campfire, its presence ominous and unsettling. My father and I exchanged nervous glances, a silent understanding that something was horribly wrong. As we watched in terror, the figure transformed before our eyes, an unnatural contortion of limbs and features, twisting into a monstrous visage. With a blood-curdling howl, the Skinwalker lunged at us, its eyes ablaze with a malevolent hunger. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to grab our belongings, to flee from the relentless horror that had descended upon us. The Skinwalker's ferocity was like nothing I'd ever seen, its movements swift and unholy, fueled by an insatiable thirst for blood. It clawed and snarled, its inhuman form a grotesque nightmare come to life. My father and I fought for our lives, our screams lost in the desolate silence of the night. Adrenaline surged through me as I desperately sought a way to fend off the relentless assault. But the Skinwalker's strength was overwhelming. In a moment of sheer terror, I saw my father fall, the Skinwalker's savage claws tearing through flesh. With a heart filled with horror and desperation, I fled into the darkness, the Skinwalker's haunting howls echoing behind me. I ran until exhaustion consumed me, haunted by the memory of that harrowing night and the realization that the legends were not merely tales spun to frighten, but a chilling reality lurking in the desolate depths of the desert. A reminder that in the darkest corners of the world, ancient and malevolent entities can manifest with a terrifying and relentless ferocity. In the remote and desolate deserts of the American Southwest, far from the bustling cities and deep within the Navajo Nation reservation, lived an enigmatic figure, a man named Jacob. To outsiders, he seemed like an ordinary member of the Navajo community, quiet and unassuming. But those who knew the dark whispers of the land understood the truth. Jacob was a skinwalker. The Navajo people had their own legends and beliefs about skinwalkers, individuals who could harness dark magic to shapeshift into animals and cause harm to others. These sinister beings were feared and abhorred, but their existence was an unfortunate reality in these parts. Jacob, once a respected medicine man, had been tempted by the forbidden knowledge of skinwalking, delving into the darkest of ceremonies and rituals. It wasn't long before he became corrupted by the power, and he used his newfound abilities to terrorize his own people. One sweltering summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the vast desert in shades of crimson and gold, Jacob, in his wolf-like form, stalked the reservation. His eyes glowed with an unnatural malevolence, and he moved silently through the shadows. He targeted a humble Navajo family, the Benalis, who lived in a remote hogan. The scent of despair and fear hung heavy in the air, and it was this scent that drew Jacob to them. As he prowled around the hogan, the Benalis huddled together inside, sensing the presence of evil outside. The grandmother, a wise and elderly woman, recognized the signs. She began chanting ancient prayers, her voice trembling but resolute. The prayers seemed to infuriate the skinwalker. With a bone-chilling howl, Jacob launched a ferocious attack on the Hogan. The family inside could hear the scraping of claws against the wooden walls and the guttural growls of the beast outside. But the prayers held a power of their own, a protective force that kept the creature at bay. It couldn't breach the Hogan. Frustrated and defeated, the Skinwalker eventually retreated into the desert night. The Benalis, though shaken, were spared that night, thanks to the protective prayers of the grandmother. They knew they were lucky, for not all who encountered a Skinwalker were as fortunate. Jacob, consumed by the malevolent spirit of the Skinwalker, would continue to stalk the night, a twisted and tortured soul, forever trapped between the worlds of man and beast. The Navajo community would live in constant fear, knowing that darkness lurked in their midst. A reminder that even the most ancient and mystical beliefs could hold terrifying truths. On the remote plains of New Mexico, rancher Sam Anderson lived a solitary life on his sprawling ranch. The vastness of the land offered him solitude and tranquility, but the isolation also left him vulnerable to the unknown. For weeks, Sam had sensed a presence, an eerie feeling that he was being watched. At night, he'd hear strange whispered chants carried by the wind, words he couldn't understand. The unease settled like a storm cloud over his life, causing sleepless nights and paralyzing anxiety. One moonless night, as the temperature dropped and the only illumination came from the starlit sky, Sam heard the haunting chants grow louder. He instinctively knew they were drawing closer, and a shiver ran down his spine. He loaded his shotgun and stepped onto his porch, scanning the vast expanse of his land. And then he saw him. A tall, dark figure emerged from the shadows, walking with an eerie grace. Sam's heart pounded, and he called out, "Who are you, and what do you want?" The figure didn't respond but continued to approach, now only a few feet away. Its face was hidden by a hood, and it was covered in layers of tattered clothing. Suddenly the figure began to convulse, as if in the throes of a terrible transformation. Sam's eyes widened in terror as he watched the figure's form shift and contort. It transformed into a creature that defied nature, a Skinwalker, its limbs elongated, and its eyes glowed with malevolence. A twisted, grotesque version of humanity now stood before him. In the voice of someone Sam had once known, the creature whispered, "You should have left, Sam." A surge of panic coursed through Sam as he realized he was facing a person he had known, a Native American from a nearby reservation. But this was no longer human. It was a malevolent force. Before he could react, the Skinwalker lunged, moving with unnatural speed and strength. Sam fired his shotgun, but it only grazed the creature. The Skinwalker's taloned fingers tore into Sam's flesh, and in that moment, terror mingled with agony. With a surge of adrenaline, Sam managed to break free, scrambling back into his cabin. The Skinwalker, now howling with fury, pursued him. Sam barred the door, praying that the creature couldn't breach it. For hours, they were locked in a terrifying standoff. The creature circled the cabin, scratching and clawing at the walls. Sam knew he couldn't survive this ordeal. As dawn broke and the first light of day spilled over the land, the Skinwalker retreated, its power waning with the vanishing night. It disappeared into the wilderness, leaving Sam battered and shaken, a witness to the chilling horrors of the Skinwalker. Though he survived that night, the experience haunted Sam for the rest of his days, a reminder that sometimes there are malevolent forces lurking in the shadows of the world that defy explanation and terrify even the bravest among us. the heartland of New Mexico, rancher Jake Carson found himself struggling to maintain his vast, sprawling ranch. The land was both his livelihood and his sanctuary, but the daily toil weighed heavily on his aging shoulders. That's when he met old Ezra, a wise and elderly Native American man who seemed to appear out of thin air. Old Ezra introduced himself as a member of the nearby Navajo community, and he offered his help, claiming he knew the land like the back of his hand. Grateful for the assistance, Jake welcomed him into his home and heart. For months, they worked side by side, mending fences, herding cattle, and even going on hunting trips deep into the wilderness. Old Ezra was a treasure trove of knowledge about the land, and his company was a solace to Jake, who had grown lonely in the vast expanse of the ranch. However, strange things began to happen. Jake would catch glimpses of old Ezra, muttering incantations under his breath, staring at him with piercing eyes that seemed to glimmer with an unsettling light. He dismissed these occurrences as quirks of a wise old man. One moonless night, as the wind whispered ominous secrets through the valley, old Ezra invited Jake on a night hunt, promising a bountiful harvest of deer. They ventured into the woods, their lanterns casting eerie shadows on the trees. As they tracked their prey, Jake noticed the old man's behavior becoming increasingly erratic. Old Ezra began to mutter strange words, and Jake felt like a helpless pawn in a ritual he couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, old Ezra turned and with terrifying speed lunged at Jake, his fingers turning into elongated taloned claws. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he fought back, struggling to break free. The struggle was gruesome, the forest bearing witness to their deadly dance. The horrific truth revealed itself when old Ezra's human facade shattered, and he transformed into a grotesque, nightmarish creature, an embodiment of terror, a Skinwalker. With inhuman strength, the Skinwalker overpowered Jake and pinned him to the forest floor. Its breath was foul, and its eyes were malevolent pools of darkness. It hissed, "You should have never trusted me." Jake, with the last reserves of his strength, managed to reach his hunting knife. With a desperate lunge, he plunged it into the Skinwalker's chest, unleashing an unearthly wail of agony. As the creature writhed in torment, Jake limped away, leaving the woods behind, shaken to his core. He would never forget that night when he befriended old Ezra, only to discover that the ancient darkness lurking in the land could take on the most human of guises. He returned to his ranch, forever haunted by the memory of the fateful night, and old Ezra's treacherous transformation into a Skinwalker, a reminder that evil could wear a familiar face and hide in the most unexpected of places. Deep within the rugged terrain of an ancient Indian reservation, 5 ranchers, Tom, Sarah, Daniel, Emily, and Alex, had chosen to build their lives on the sacred land, blissfully ignorant of the ancient, malevolent presence that had haunted these hills for generations. One chilly autumn evening, as the sun sank below the jagged peaks, the ranchers gathered around a roaring fire, the warm flames flickering in their eyes, and the stories of their ancestors echoing in the wind. But as the night deepened, they felt an uncanny unease settle over them. Their tales of skinwalkers and otherworldly beings became a haunting reality. The wind carried whispers that could not be attributed to nature alone. Odd sounds, like the faint rattling of bones, filled the air. They knew they were no longer alone. The ranchers' lanterns cast eerie shadows, as they ventured deeper into the woods, seeking the source of the disquiet. As they reached the edge of the forest, a figure emerged from the shadows, resembling a disheveled, injured man. With a desperate tone, the figure, claiming to be lost, begged for their help. Sarah, the most compassionate among them, hesitated, convinced by the figure's pleading eyes. But Daniel, wary of the legends he had grown up with, looked past the figure's facade. He noticed the glint of malevolence in its eyes, the way its hands trembled. This was no ordinary lost soul. Suddenly, Emily called out, "Wait! Look at its feet!" There, hidden beneath the tattered clothing, were hooves. The creature's disguise was slipping. A tense silence enveloped the group as they realized the terrible truth. The figure before them was a Skinwalker, an entity that had taken on the guise of a human. Panic welled up within them as they backed away, slowly. With an unholy screech, the Skinwalker revealed its true form, a nightmarish creature with grotesque proportions, taloned fingers, and hollow eyes. It lunged at them, its malevolent laughter echoing through the forest. The ranchers scattered, pursued by the relentless Skinwalker. The beast moved with supernatural speed and agility, darting among the trees. It played cruel games with their minds, imitating the voices of their loved ones, their pleas for help, and their screams of terror. As the night wore on, the ranchers regrouped near the heart of the forest. Sarah's compassionate nature turned into a deadly trap. The Skinwalker, sensing her weakness, seized the opportunity. It lunged at her, its clawed hand piercing her heart. In their terror, the remaining ranchers managed to overpower the creature, using a torch to set it ablaze. The Skinwalker howled in agony as its twisted form was consumed by fire. The ancient evil was vanquished, but at a heavy cost. Sarah lay lifeless, a tragic reminder of the horrors that had befallen them on that haunted reservation. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, the ranchers, shaken and scarred, knew that the memory of that night and the ancient darkness that had awakened in their midst would never truly fade. The air was thick with unease as I reminisced about my friendship with the local Native American man, a bond that turned into a chilling nightmare, a tale that still chills me to the bone. It all began innocently, with me being fascinated by the folklore and traditions of the local tribe. My friendship with the Native American man was genuine, and I respected his knowledge of ancient customs, including the eerie legend of Skinwalkers. As time passed, he started sharing stories about the power and allure of becoming a Skinwalker, a transformation that would grant unimaginable abilities. But I was resolute in my refusal to embrace such dark practices, wanting no part in a path veiled in malevolence. My rejection seemed to unravel something within him. What started as persistent requests turned into incessant harassment. He'd stalk me, lurking in the shadows, whispering eerie warnings and veiled threats that sent shivers down my spine. Days turned into sleepless nights as his relentless pursuit continued. I felt the weight of his ominous presence, a constant reminder that I had unwittingly invited darkness into my life. Then came that fateful evening when I saw him standing outside my home, bathed in an otherworldly glow. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and dread as I watched in disbelief. His form contorted, twisting into a grotesque and terrifying creature, a Skinwalker. I was frozen in terror, witnessing the impossible unfold before my eyes. The Skinwalker's eyes burned with an unholy fire, fixated on me with a hunger that chilled me to the core. In a frenzied panic, I fled, the Skinwalker's unearthly howls echoing behind me. Every step felt like an eternity, my mind reeling with the horror of what I had witnessed. The encounter shattered my sense of safety and reality, a stark reminder of the darkness that lingers within ancient legends. It was a chilling testament to the malevolent forces that exist beyond our comprehension, leaving me forever haunted by the specter of that nightmarish transformation and the Skinwalker's relentless pursuit. I grew up in the heart of Navajo country, surrounded by tales of skinwalkers that echoed through the reservation. The stories were more than mere legends. They were whispered warnings of darkness lurking at the edge of our reality. One moonless night, I was visiting my grandmother's remote homestead, deep within the reservation. The air felt charged with an eerie energy as she regaled me with cautionary tales about the Skinwalkers, malevolent beings with the power to transform into animals and humans. As the fire crackled in the hearth, a chilling gust of wind rattled the windows, and a primal fear crept into the room. My grandmother fell silent, her eyes wide with apprehension. That's when we heard it, a haunting sound that seemed to seep through the walls. The sound of distant, mournful howling. Shivers raced down my spine as my grandmother hurriedly drew protective symbols in the air, muttering prayers under her breath. The atmosphere thickened, suffused with an inexplicable sense of dread. In the dead of night, an ominous figure appeared outside, a shadowy silhouette with glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. My heart pounded against my ribcage as the figure approached the perimeter of the house, its steps unnaturally silent. The air grew heavy with an acrid smell, a mixture of decay and something indefinably sinister. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, sensing an otherworldly presence lingering just beyond the walls. As the figure moved closer, it began to change, contorting into grotesque forms, a distorted amalgamation of human and animal features. Panic consumed me, but I was paralyzed, unable to move or scream. The entity pressed against the window, its malevolent gaze fixed upon me. In that moment, I could almost feel its intent, an insidious desire to invade, to tear apart the boundary between our worlds. Suddenly, with a blood-curdling screech, the figure vanished into the night. The air around us lifted, but the memory of that encounter lingered, an encounter that blurred the line between folklore and horrifying reality. Since that night, I've never been able to shake the feeling of being watched, a lingering fear that the Skinwalker might return, forever altering my perception of the world and the unseen terrors that inhabit it. I am still haunted by the harrowing events that unfolded, an unspeakable nightmare that shattered the illusion of safety and sanity in my life, a chilling encounter with the horrors of a Skinwalker. It all began with our beloved German Shepherd, a loyal companion that had become an integral part of our lives. Tragically, our dog fell victim to a venomous rattlesnake while innocently playing in the grass. The loss was devastating, especially for my wife, who mourned the death of our faithful pet. Days passed, and a strange aura seemed to envelop my grieving wife. Her demeanor shifted, her once vibrant spirit now clouded by an inexplicable darkness. I dismissed it as the lingering sorrow of losing our beloved dog. However, the signs became more unsettling. I witnessed her peculiar behavior, erratic movements, distant stares, and a sense of detachment that sent a chill down my spine. But it was what I saw one fateful day that shattered my reality. I caught sight of my wife in the backyard, digging frantically near our dog's resting place. My heart raced with a sense of dread as I approached her. To my horror, I saw a figure atop a distant hill, a man who appeared Native American, observing the scene. My blood ran cold as I watched it in disbelief. My wife, consumed by an otherworldly force, ripped the skin off our deceased dog's body with an unnerving ease. With a sickening transformation, she donned the skin, morphing into a grotesque and terrifying manifestation, a Skinwalker. I was paralyzed with terror as the Skinwalker fixed its malevolent gaze upon me, its eyes gleaming with a hunger for something beyond comprehension. The air grew thick with an unnatural silence, a primal fear that gripped my very soul. With a primal instinct urging me to flee, I turned and ran, my heart pounding with a terror I couldn't comprehend. I sought refuge, but the haunting memory of that gruesome transformation and the Skinwalker's relentless pursuit haunted my every waking moment. The nightmarish encounter shattered my sense of safety and reality, a chilling reminder that some evils lurk within the fabric of the world, disguised in the most unsuspecting of guises. It was a horrifying ordeal that forever scarred my existence, leaving me haunted by the malevolent presence of the Skinwalker that once wore the guise of my beloved wife. The forest had always held an allure for us, a group of 6 seasoned hunters seeking adventure in the untouched wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. Little did we know, our escapade would spiral into a nightmarish encounter that defied all rationale. Days into our journey, we found ourselves disoriented, lost amidst the dense labyrinth of trees. Panic crept in as the realization of our predicament sank its teeth into our resolve. We were running low on supplies. Our only hope rested in finding our way back to civilization. It was then that we stumbled upon a lone figure, a Native American elder, his weathered face lined with wisdom and experience. He spoke of knowing these woods like the lines on his palm, offering to guide us out, promising safe havens to camp and rest along the way. His guidance seemed a blessing at first, leading us to secluded clearings where we set up camp. Yet, as the nights wore on, a palpable sense of unease settled among us. Whispers carried on the wind, chilling our bones with inexplicable fear. On the 3rd night, as we huddled around the flickering fire, the elder's countenance darkened. His eyes bore an intensity that sent shivers down our spines. He spoke of a presence, a malevolence lurking in the shadows, stalking us with unseen eyes. Before we could comprehend his warning, the forest turned against us. Strange noises echoed through the trees, rustling leaves masking the approach of an unknown terror. We dismissed it as paranoia until one of us disappeared without a trace. The nights grew colder, and a sinister aura enveloped our camp. The elder's guidance became erratic, leading us deeper into the heart of the unknown. We felt like prey, hunted by an entity we couldn't comprehend. One by one, my companions vanished into the night, swallowed by an unseen force. Panic consumed us. Paranoia gnawed at our sanity, and the chilling realization dawned upon us. We were being hunted by something beyond our understanding. The elder, our supposed guide, was the last to remain. His once reassuring presence turned ominous, a harbinger of our impending doom. As he bid us farewell with cryptic words, his figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving us at the mercy of the unknown. Alone and petrified, I braced myself for the inevitable, haunted by the unseen entity that prowled the darkness, picking us off one by one. The forest swallowed our screams, leaving behind a chilling silence, a grim reminder of our ill-fated encounter with forces beyond comprehension.